"This house is absolutely stunning," exclaimed my sister-in-law as she inspected every corner. "You're really calculating, aren't you? That's why you decided to inherit this house," she added accusingly. After examining the house, Noelle made an unexpected remark. "You have great taste. We're going to inherit this house." "Hasn't the inheritance matter already been settled?" I countered, trying to understand what she meant. "There shouldn't be any objections. We've decided to trade our current home for this one," she insisted. Her determination was evident. It was clear that arguing with her was pointless, but the moment was approaching when she would find out what I was truly capable of. "I'm Remy. I'm 28 years old and unmarried. Currently, I'm taking care of my grandmother, who is ill, while living in her house with my mother. I have a married brother, Mark, but since he found it difficult to support our grandmother, I took on the role. Although my mother is also around, she's old and finds caregiving difficult, so I'm the primary caregiver for my grandmother. When we were little, our mother got divorced and worked hard to raise us. As a result, my brother and I were mainly raised by our grandmother. I can't abandon her after all she has done for us. Moreover, I am single and have a flexible schedule due to my ability to work from home. My brother's wife, Noelle, doesn't seem very interested in taking care of our family, so I was the most appropriate person to take on this role. Caregiving is challenging. I continue to do it daily as a way of showing gratitude to my beloved grandmother. My days with my grandmother are full of enjoyment, and I don't feel any hardship. However, recently I've been feeling stressed about something else. It's about the attitude of my brother's wife. Mark does recognize the support he received from our grandmother, and although he can't be involved in her actual care, he often visits us to check on things. But his wife's behavior and words during these visits irritate me. "Are you cleaning properly?" Noelle once asked, inspecting the room. "Look at this room. You haven't cleaned it, have you? Since you're relying on Grandma, make sure you do your part." My sister-in-law, to put it positively, is the type to speak her mind, but from my perspective, she's unpleasant and rude. She visits our house, criticizes me with such an attitude, and often makes sarcastic remarks. I've let a lot of things slide, but the phrase freeloader is hard to accept. "You're just living here for free," she once said with a smirk. "Don't you think you have it easy staying here?" Indeed, I am staying at my grandmother's house, but I earn my own living expenses. I receive no financial support from my brother, yet his wife accuses me of having an easy life at my grandmother's house. It's incomprehensible to be criticized by her, who doesn't understand the difficulty of working while managing the house and caregiving. I am legitimately working and supporting myself with my income. I haven't touched any of my grandmother's assets. Even when I explained these points to Noelle, she ignored my words and provoked me further. "Even so, the reason you're caregiving is that you don't have to pay rent, right? Instead of relying on your parents, you're relying on your grandmother, aren't you?" my sister-in-law said sarcastically. Stress was piling up from dealing with my brother's wife. However, I also feel tired every day and don't have the energy to deal with her. Knowing that whatever I say would be met with negative responses, I gradually began to ignore her sarcasm. Then she would say, "Oh, you're not talking back. Does your silence mean you agree?" Whether I respond to her or not, Noelle, who frequently picks on me, leaves me in disbelief. To be honest, I want to ask my brother not to bring her along, but she's cunning and behaves as such. She never says anything bad to me in front of Mark. The unpleasant words are always thrown at me when it's just her and me. Therefore, my brother, unaware of her true nature, always brings her to our grandmother's house. I did try to have a light conversation about it, but it ended with him defending her. "She wouldn't say such awful things, right? Are you bullying my wife? Nobody likes an annoying sister-in-law. She's making a special effort to get along with you. Try to be friendly," Mark said dismissively. He always took his wife's side. Talking to him only made things worse. Realizing that I couldn't rely on my brother, I decided it was best to have as little to do with Noelle as possible. While harboring such feelings, one day, my grandmother's condition suddenly worsened, and she needed to be hospitalized. Mark was busy with work and couldn't find time to visit the hospital. As a result, my mother and I ended up taking care of my grandmother. My mother's health wasn't good either due to overwork, so it was difficult for her to go to the hospital every day. Therefore, I was the one who went to the hospital daily, checking on and caring for my grandmother. After a month of such a life, my grandmother quietly passed away. It was sudden, but I was somewhat prepared, knowing her condition was serious. However, it was difficult for me to accept her death, having spent my childhood with her and being with her until her last moment. While devastated by this harsh reality, I informed my mother and brother of our grandmother's death. Then, unexpectedly, my sister-in-law came to see me. Mark was delayed due to work reasons, so his wife came to me first. Could it be that she was concerned about me in such a situation? I couldn't believe it given her past attitude, but I thought for a moment that she might have some humanity. While feeling grateful for her visit, I expressed my thanks, but her response was unexpected. "If you have time to grieve, hurry up and finish the funeral and inheritance procedures," she said coldly. "Unlike you, your brother's busy with work. Don't give us any extra trouble." Instead of a warm-hearted sentiment or comfort, she seemed to have come to urge the progression of the inheritance and funeral arrangements. Of course, this is the kind of person she is. I was surprised to find out again that my brother's wife was such a heartless and self-centered person. Despite my grief, she started to rush the funeral arrangements. I certainly appreciated the fact that Noelle came to help in place of my brother, but I wasn't in a position to be ordered around by her, especially when she has been keeping her distance from our family until now. Though I felt dissatisfaction in my heart, I continued to endure, not wanting to cause a conflict right after my grandmother's death. When Mark finally appeared, my sister-in-law quieted down for a while. However, as soon as she was out of his sight, her usual sarcasms toward me didn't stop. Amidst my desire to properly process my grandmother's passing, her behavior infuriated me. Additionally, she had a talent for making insensitive remarks. "Your grandmother lived too long. Did she end up using all her assets? After all that, how much inheritance will we get?" Noelle asked, even before the funeral was over. She was already worried about money. My patience couldn't withstand this. "Is that what you would be thinking right after someone's death? Please stop it," I finally raised my voice. She seemed a bit surprised too. Nevertheless, there's a difference between things that should be said and things that shouldn't. Normally, my sister-in-law would have retorted, but this time, she didn't respond and just left the scene. Later, perhaps realizing she had gone too far, she avoided interacting with me, and the funeral was completed peacefully. At that point, my mental state also began to stabilize. I hadn't completely overcome the shock, but I vowed in my heart that it was pointless to dwell on the past. I returned to the house where I had lived with my grandmother and began to sort through her belongings alone. While organizing what inheritance should be claimed and what needed to be dealt with, my brother and his wife visited. "I'll help to sort out her belongings," Mark offered. There were many items, so I was grateful for the help. However, Noelle, yet again, focused only on discussing assets and money. While sorting through our grandmother's belongings, it might be understandable to discuss inheritance. I didn't argue with her at that time, but even my brother seemed slightly puzzled by her attitude. As we continued to sort out her things and progressed with the inheritance procedures, it became clear that what our grandmother left behind was her house and some money. At that moment, my sister-in-law quickly said, "We'll take the money. This house isn't suitable as a place for us to live, so you should inherit the house and take care of it." Perhaps the house, clearly showing its age, didn't appear valuable in her eyes. I sensed from her attitude that choosing money was more beneficial to her. Mark seemed slightly perplexed by her argument, but ultimately chose money over the house. Understanding their intentions, I calmly decided to inherit the house. As the conversation wound down, my brother and his wife began preparing to leave. "Thanks for helping out," I said as I saw them off at the entrance. Just as they were leaving, Noelle leaned close and murmured with a smirk, "Too bad all you got was this old house. But hey, at least I walked away with the cash. Was looking after your grandmother even worth it?" With that, my sister-in-law turned and walked away, her words laced with disdain. Her contempt for me was unmistakable to the very end. That day, I made a silent vow. No matter what the future holds, I will never forgive her. In the following months, I continued to live with my mother in the same house. It felt quiet without my grandmother. On a particular day, my mother was away on a trip with her friends, which added to the stillness within the house. As dinner time approached and I was about to head to the kitchen, the doorbell rang. Who could it be? I wondered as I headed to the entrance, where I found my brother's wife standing alone. My brother was not there. She had come alone. Good evening. Is something wrong? I asked in surprise, opening the door to find her already stepping inside. Hey, why did you keep it a secret? This house is amazing, Noelle exclaimed loudly, inspecting every corner of the room. You're really calculating, aren't you? You knew this would happen. That's why you chose to inherit the house. Her words were always laced with criticism towards me. Perhaps she was surprised by the transformation of my grandmother's house. From that surprise, she directed her grievances at me. In truth, after my grandmother passed away, I earnestly renovated the house. Recently, more and more people have been customizing and renovating homes themselves. I was also interested in this trend and, though a beginner, decided to give it a try. Fortunately, a friend who worked in construction lived nearby. With his support, I was able to finish the house to my liking. This house was something my grandmother was proud of. When she was alive, she used to say with a smile, "Grandpa was particular, so the carpenter chose and used good quality wood for this house." My grandfather had a particular preference for wood, and his acquaintances at the construction company were highly praised for their skills. I respected my grandparents' wishes and went on to renovate the house. The renovated house looked like luxurious accommodation. While incorporating modern design, it maintained the presence of my grandparents. This house, which my grandmother cherished, also became a valuable place for me. After looking around the house, my sister-in-law made an unexpected remark. "You have great taste to renovate the house like this. We'll take this house as our inheritance." Wasn't the inheritance issue already settled? I asked, struggling to understand what she was saying. She then said assertively, "Listen, we've decided we'll exchange our current house for this house. This house will be my husband's inheritance. You agree, right?" She was pressuring me as usual. "There shouldn't be any objections because it's an exchange," she insisted. "We'll start moving immediately. Sort out your belongings and leave soon." My brother's wife repeatedly said to leave, as if she had gone mad. I reiterated the facts about the inheritance, but she seemed to intentionally ignore them. Her determination was clear. She wouldn't budge, no matter how much I tried to persuade her. She believed that not yielding would make her point. It was obvious that arguing with her was pointless. Deciding that further dialogue was impossible, I chose to temporarily retreat. "Understood. Then I'll leave this house," I conveyed to her, and started organizing my things. "You've got it now. Please don't waste any time," she demanded, a wave of relief crossing her face as she saw me cooperating. Her expression softened into a smile. Ignoring her smug expression, I pretended to collect my belongings and walked to the garden shed. From there, I took the tools used during the renovation and headed back inside, where Noelle was waiting. Seeing me holding the tools, she was momentarily surprised, but soon urged me to hurry. "You can move those tools later. Just clear the room for now," she continued. "I understand. I simply needed these to collect my personal belongings," I replied, and slammed the tools into the large living room wall. My sister-in-law looked shocked, unable to grasp what was happening. Ignoring her astonishment, I began removing the wall materials. At that moment, my sister-in-law screamed in shock, seeing me destroying the house. She attacked me in fear, raising her voice. "Wait, you! What are you planning? What are you trying to do?" she yelled, desperate to stop what I was doing. While holding her back with the tool, I explained, "All the materials for the house renovation were paid for by me. They are my belongings, so I will collect them all." "That's not what I meant. Stop the destruction." Noelle continued to scream but didn't come closer to me. Ignoring her cries, I continued to strip off the wall components. As I was about to start working on the floor with my tools raised, my brother appeared. I had called him immediately when I had left my sister-in-law alone to fetch the tools. "What's going on?" I could hear loud voices from all the way outside, he said as he entered the room. Seeing the state of the living room, he looked astonished. What happened to both of you?" Mark must have been greatly surprised to see the damaged room, me holding a tool, and his wife crying next to him. She quickly told him what had happened. "This person is dangerous," my sister-in-law yelled, pointing at me. It was natural for him to feel suspicious of me under these circumstances. However, his wife was the reason I behaved like this. She suddenly came today and told me to leave the house, I calmly explained. I didn't expect the house to be renovated, and I can't accept the fact that it was inherited in a secretive way, Noelle exclaimed indignantly. That's unfair. Therefore she should leave and we should live here, she added. Hearing my words, she started making incomprehensible comments in front of my brother. Listening to her contradictory statements, Mark fully supported me. We agreed that my sister would inherit the house, and we would receive money as an inheritance, right? He asked. Isn't the handling of this house my sister's right? Cornered by his words, my sister-in-law felt isolated and became emotional. Why aren't you taking my side? She shouted. If you won't do that, then I will end our marriage. Indeed, there's no point in continuing a marriage with someone who doesn't accept their mistakes and refuses to apologize. My sister-in-law, trying to pull my brother to her side with the threat of divorce, was met with his agreement. She was at a loss for words. From then on, my brother took control. What if my sister claims that the following is unfair? What if we use the inherited money for investments, and the money we obtained increased? How would you respond if she accused us of being unfair? He asked her. There's no way I'd concede, my sister-in-law replied emotionally. We're the ones who invested it, and we haven't violated anything, she concluded. Receiving her reaction, my brother spoke softly as if to guide her. Do you really think so? But what you're arguing is the same thing. This residence is old, and my sister used her own funds to renovate it and increase its value. After inheriting it, she just changed it according to her own wishes. There's no issue. My brother then turned to me. I'm sorry, he said. Sitting next to him, he appealed to his wife. You should apologize to her. Perhaps you'll realize your mistake through this perspective, Mark demanded. With tears in her eyes, Noelle said, I'm sorry for causing such a commotion. Of course, there are many things I wanted to point out, but for now, I accepted her apology. I sincerely apologize, my brother added. After that, my brother left the house quietly with his calmed-down wife. Though it was somewhat forceful, I was able to protect the house I had shared with my grandmother. As I saw off my brother and his wife, I spoke to my grandmother in heaven. I got a bit too excited and damaged your beloved house, Grandma. I'll touch it up until it's beautiful again. So please forgive me, Grandma. I'll take good care of this house from now on. Thank you, my dear. It felt as if I received a reply from my grandmother. My grandmother's photo that was displayed in the house seemed to be smiling faintly. Eventually, my brother chose the path of divorce. It became clear that what I said about her past attitudes and words toward me was true, and it seemed he also judged it would be difficult to keep living together. She probably wouldn't change. My brother hinted with a smile that perhaps our grandmother had given him some advice. As for me, I rebuilt the damaged house with my own hands. The repair costs were claimed by my brother to take responsibility for his ex-wife's mistakes. Seeing the state of the house, a friend who works at a construction company teased, that was a bold move. Honestly, I had always planned to renovate the color of the living room walls someday. I was never completely satisfied with it, but despite the challenges, I'm now happy with the outcome. Moving forward, I hope to cherish the memories this house holds and create new ones to build upon those experiences.